This is the Truth Network.
Hidden treasures of the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Amazing stuff we get to dig into today as we are still in the 7th chapter and the 5th verse of the Song of Solomon, and that is the Hay verse. We got more stuff to express today as we are moving past thine head is like caramel, and now today it is, and the hair of thine head like purple. And so really cool, really cool stuff today, as the idea of the hair of thine head is like purple. And so the word hair that is translated hair here is a different word than is used anywhere else in the Song of Solomon, or really it's the only place in the Bible that it indicates hair like this, and it very much has to do with weaving, and that has to do with the Nazarite, okay, which has a lot to do with this verse. And so when it's the weavings of thy head is like purple, and purple itself is very much connected to weaving. And throughout the Bible, you'll see that it always is an image of royalty. But perhaps as we dig into both the idea of the Nazarite and purple, we'll get an idea of why this is so incredibly important to this particular verse. Because the idea of the Nazarite, and in fact, Rashi, when he comments on this verse, makes reference to these weaves of the hair are very much Nazarite weaves, like, Samson had weaves in his hair. And the idea of the Nazarite is that they're set apart. But the first time you find the word Nazarite in the scriptures is the blessing that Joseph gets, and the idea that Joseph was separated from his brothers. And interestingly, the word Nazarite itself actually means an undressed vine. That's where you get the idea of hair that continues to grow, and it grows wild. And the idea of that undressed vine is that, that was that they were trusting God the year that they were to live off the undressed vine. In other words, it had everything to do with faith. God is going to make it happen. And when you think about Joseph, he was an undressed vine from the standpoint of he was very much separated, and the idea of a Nazarite is to be separated. He was very much separated from his brothers in a very unique way, and he was left in faith, right? It was just him that was going through thing after thing after thing, that his faith was being tested throughout the days as a slave in Potiphar's house and then in prison, before he was finally raised up in purple. And you get the picture that purple is extremely costly, and weaving fabric takes a great deal of work. And the idea of purple, it takes actually thousands of these very expensive mollusks, that the beautiful shell creatures, in order to get the liquid to make the purple dye, which is why the dye was so costly, which is why the rulers would wear it, is because everybody couldn't afford the stuff, because, again, it came at a great cost. Well, when you think about Joseph's faith, it came at a great cost, and he was definitely separated as a wild vine. And through that faith, right, amazing things happened, and families were fed, and all sorts of stuff. But no doubt that Jesus is held captive. In other words, you might remember again that it was great faith that caused him to be astonished. And here we're looking at this purple, as it takes great faith if you're going to start this project to make some purple cloth, all the effort to make the weave, and then you got to begin the process of finding all the shells in order to create the purple dye, and then the whole process takes a great deal of faith that it's all going to be worth it. And that's exactly where you find Joseph in that prison, right? Joseph, when he was in the hole, his brothers had dug for him, and he was, as it were, no longer connected, but separated very much in a very unique way to grow his faith to be that which he would be. And when you look in Genesis 49, in the blessing of Joseph, you'll see this passage. Verse 26 specifically, it says, the blessings of thy father prevailed above the blessing of those progenitors unto the utmost bounds of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of his head of him that was separate from his brother. And that word separate right there, that is the word Nazarite, okay? And that very much is, when you get that picture of Joseph's faith in the midst of his imprisonment and all that, is the costly thing that is on Joseph's head that again holds God, as we'll see later on in this verse. So the question obviously is, how does this work out in your life, right? Where you went through some trial or tribulation to the point that it took great faith to see that God was still for you and God was going to bring you through this, even though you'd been separated from everybody and you were, to an extent, a wild vine. Well, I certainly had that happen in my life, not to the extent Joseph has. But, when we lost the dealership and we lost everything, there were a lot of prayers that went up. But somehow or another, I continued to trust God. I mean, we lost our house, our cars. I lost certainly my job and all sorts of things that went. But I did not lose my family. I didn't get separated like that. But I did get separated from all those and the ways. I was actually even separated from the car business as I went into this new area of faith in radio. And God provided in miraculous ways, but it was definitely a test for me, and it was definitely a separation from a lot of different things. And it's beautiful how costly all that stuff would appear to be at the time, and how difficult, those times were, but they were the worst of times. They were the best of times because, as you see how God came through in stuff like that, then, it gives you a peace and a joy you can only have on the other side of that I know Joseph knew all too well. And that purple is the result of all that effort. And here's this glorious raiment that is made in the hair of the Nazarite. Just beautiful stuff as we think about those braids. I love this idea of your hair is purple because it's braided with all this faith that is going to show off that Jesus just loves. Thanks for listening.